Hey there, thanks for listening to me read the Hope Chest today. Today we're doing pages 175 through 182. Violet is going to do some more spying today, and what I want you to listen for is so she'll be with the anti-suffragists, and listen to how they're talking and sort of what their strategy is to to not let the amendment pass. And I want you to think whether that's the best, most honest and ethical way of supporting their side of the issue or not. So that's what I want you to listen for. Where did I leave off, Don, yesterday? Oh, here we are. At the thought of after this is all over, they both lapsed into silence. Violet was thinking about Chloe, who had yet to say that Violet could come and live with her. Violet didn't want to go home. She didn't miss it at all. All right, she missed her own room and her bed with the green Chanel spread and her shelf full of Oz books, but she didn't miss the empty, echoing loneliness of a house with no one in it but Stephen, who wasn't really there, and Father, who never really talked except to issue edicts, and Mother, who had betrayed Violet. She supposed Myrtle was thinking about the Girls' Training Institute and how she didn't want to go back there, and where she would go if she didn't. When will it all be over? Said Myrtle. No one knows, said Violet. The Senate might vote on the amendment today, or they might not, which would mean maybe they'd vote on it Monday, or maybe not. And then the House might vote on it Monday, but they have to wait for a committee to recommend it. She broke off, noting that Myrtle was laughing at her. You sound like a politician or something, said Myrtle. Violet shrugged, because I've been listening to so much political talk lately. She thought of how sick she was of political talk. I should come visit you and Mr. Martin where you're staying, and maybe we could go. No, said Myrtle. Violet looked away, stung. A colored man in overalls was sweeping the edge of the sidewalk, his broom making gritty swishing sounds as he swept clouds of dust into the gutter. It's just not that interesting a place. You'd be bored, Myrtle said, sounding half apologetic. Before Violet could reply, the door to the drugstore burst open and Mr. Martin stormed out. Violet could just imagine the eyes of everyone in the place following him and his scar and his missing fingers and the Palmer agents had such a good description of. Myrtle jumped to her feet and waved a hasty goodbye to Violet. Violet was sorry to see her go, but Mr. Martin clearly needed supervision. He just refuses to understand, said Chloe when Violet sat back down at the marble-top table. I told him back in New York that nothing was more important than winning the vote. I don't know why he thinks I should have changed my mind now. Violet decided this remark was not really addressed to her. What's going to happen today? She asked. Are they meeting in the Capitol? The Senate will probably vote today, said Chloe, pulling the paper straw out of her strawberry phosphate and looking at it disconsolately. It was coming apart. Really? On the Susan B. Anthony amendment? Violet thought this was great news and couldn't understand why Chloe wasn't more excited. It's only the Senate, said Chloe. That's just half the legislature, and there's still the House to worry about, and they're what we are worried about. We know we're going to win the Senate. All anybody on either side ever seemed to say was that they knew they were going to win, so Violet wasn't very impressed by this. I don't think Senator Candler is going to vote for the amendment. He despises women. Chloe smiled and stuck her limp straw back into her drink. No, I agree. Senator Candler will vote against it, but I still think we're going to win it. Then we'll have 35 and a half states, and the Antis will be more desperate than ever, and the battle will just get hotter. Violet was relieved to see her sister smile and decided to bring up something that had been on her mind. Chloe, when we go back to New York, can I... Violet, I really can't think about that right now, said Chloe. She picked up the pamphlets. Do you want to chuck these in the trash barrel, or shall I? Chapter 15. The Ferocious Mrs. Cat. With her white dress and purple satin sash, Violet was suitably dressed to eat in the dining room at the Hermitage Hotel, and that was where she was on the evening of Saturday, August 14th. Oh, I forgot to say, so the background today is the dining room at the Hermitage Hotel. So, the Tulane Hotel, where Chloe and the suffragists are staying, isn't around anymore, but the Hermitage still is. We had a picture of it last week, too, I think. But the Hermitage has been restored, and so it looks, this is maybe what it looked like about 100 years ago. So this is where Violet's going to have dinner. With her white dress and purple satin sash, Violet was suitably dressed to eat in the dining room at the Hermitage Hotel, and that was where she was on the evening of Saturday, August 14th. The Antis must have had plenty of money, all right, because there were at least a dozen of them sitting around the dinner table. None of them seemed to be making anything of the fact that Violet was there too, or to be too worried about the expense. They had rack of lamb, tomato consomme, scalloped potatoes, creamed cauliflower, hot slaw, and now they were waiting for dessert. The orchestra was playing, and waiters in white uniforms with white gloves were zipping to and fro carrying plates with silver covers, carrying platters with silver covers. Violet was being seen and not heard, just like at home, although she had long since realized that what this really meant was not being seen either. The Antis were talking about the Senate vote, which they had lost, and the House vote, which they expected to win. "There's no way we can lose in the House," Miss Josephine Anderson Pearson said. "A week ago, the Suffs had 2/3 of the House members on their side, and now, thanks to us, they haven't even got a simple majority." "But we lost the Senate, didn't we?" said Miss Escudrill, looking confused. "We always expected to lose the Senate," said Miss Pearson dismissively. "Did we expect to lose it 25-4? Miss Escudrill asked. "Never you mind, Anisette. Everything's under the control of wiser minds than yours," said Miss Pearson as a white-gloved waiter set a dish of caramel custard in front of her. A week ago, Violet thought, she had telegraphed her parents from Washington. 9 days ago, she had still been at home. It seemed much longer. Mrs. James S. Pinkard looked after the waiter, who had gone to get more custard. "Nothing but white servants are visible at this hotel. They guarantee it." "There are colored waiters downstairs in the grill room," said the man sitting to Violet's left, who Violet thought was named Mr. Garlick. In fact, they're all colored. "Oh, well, waiters," the man to Violet's right spoke to her considerable surprise. He was dressed in a Confederate Army uniform, which he had dribbled some tomato consomme down the front of. He had a bushy white mustache and long white hair combed over a bald spot on top. He had spent most of the meal staring off into space, although occasionally he stared at the other people at the table as if he was trying to figure out who they were. People expect waiters to be colored. Having spoken, he stared straight ahead of him again and dropped his spoon on the floor. Violet got down under the table to retrieve it for him. "Speaking of colors, isn't this paneling beautiful?" said Mrs. Pinkard. "It's Circassian walnut. Circassian walnut? I don't know what that word is. Made in Russia by the same factory that did the woodwork for the Titanic." "Ha! You didn't hear anything about equal rights on the Titanic, did you?" said Mr. Garlick. "Now what are we going to do about the Bolshevik?" "Which Bolshevik?" said Mrs. Pinkard. "They're pretty much all Bolsheviks." And just remember, so Bolshevik was just a title that was given to people that had more socialist or radical type beliefs. So they're not referring to Mr. Martin here. They're referring to one of the senators that is that they think is socialist. That's a Bolshevik. "They're pretty much all Bolsheviks," said Mrs. Pinkard. Violet had seen the spoon next to Mrs. Pinkard's high-heeled pump, but she froze and listened. "That foreign Jew," said the Garlic. "Oh, the Jew," said Miss Pearson. There was something about the way they both said Jew that made Violet's skin crawl. "He can be made to disappear," said Mr. Garlic. "Mr. Garlic, I don't think we really need to go as far as murder," Mrs. Pinkard whispered and gave a nervous laugh. Something glopped coldly down on Violet's arm. She looked. It was caramel custard. Someone must have given the Confederate veteran another spoon. "I'm not talking about murder," said Mr. Garlic, sounding both affronted and amused. All we need is for the Jew to disappear for a week or so. That'll throw the Suffs into at least as big a tizzy as they were when they lost Seth Walker." "Can they lose the Jew the same way?" said Miss Escudrill, sounding like she was desperately trying to keep up with the conversation. "He's not for sale," said Miss Pearson dismissively. "Do you know he actually claims to have no interest in politics? Ran for the legislature for this special session merely so he could vote for the Susan B. Anthony Amendment. No hope of making him disappear till it's over." "Sure there is," said Mr. Garlic. "How about if he wakes up on Monday morning with a big bump on his bald head, locked in the hold of a tramp steamer headed south out of New Orleans?" Violet had heard enough. She crawled out from under the table, squeezing carefully between the Confederate veteran's gray-clad legs and Mr. Garlic's spats without touching either of them. She slid along the Circassian walnut-paneled wall and hurried through the busy lobby and out the women's entrance. She had to tell Chloe what she'd heard right away. Okay, so I hope you caught that. They're talking about like kidnapping a senator that wants to vote for the women's suffrage and then taking him to a different city and like locking him up in a boat. So, is that a very ethical way to kind of get what you want? I think we could all agree that that's not. That conspiring to kidnap a legislator so he can't vote is probably not the best way to go about things. Thank you for watching.